am absolutely delighted to welcome two very special guests to my channel, and I think that they should be welcoming me to theirs. This is a chat about an indigenous play from Canada, and we decided to read it in advance of IndigAThon, which is happening for the entire month of November. And we have all read the play and we're going to chat about it, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion. IndigAThon has two hosts, Michelle from Thor Wants Another Letter, and the other host is Bear at A2 Brody. I think that's how he would pronounce it. Those announcement videos are in the show notes. And this is a discussion on a modern classic play in the Canadian theatrical canon, Dry Lips Oughta Move to Kapuskasing by Tomson Highway, who is a Cree playwright and writer. And he is also two-spirited or gay. And this play premiered in 1989. And we have all read it, and you can read it too. It's not that easy to find as a paper copy. I don't think it's impossible. But we all read it on the website archive.org, where you can borrow the book for free. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes. And without further ado, who would like to start? Who would like to get us going?
Can I say just one thing about discussing drama that Tilly and I, and just to say that Tilly and I discuss a play every month.
Yes.
And we have said we're really, happy to join in with other people to do that, because there's not enough talk about drama on BookTube. So it's a special treat to be discussing drama with Shawn.
It's only taken a year and a half for anyone to take us up on our offer to join in on that.
Well, I misunderstood the invitation. I thought we were just going to create some drama on BookTube. I didn't realize we were talking about drama. And I have to say that I feel a little intimidated to be talking about drama. So I'm really glad to be talking about it with two people who are very well versed in talking about drama as works of literature, as literary texts. I have studied drama in my English academic life, but that was centuries ago. So I'm really looking forward to diving in. And that's why I'd like somebody else to go first. I think I nominate Tilly.
Oh, okay. I don't know where to start. I enjoyed this play. I particularly enjoyed the first act. I think we're going to try and avoid any spoilers of the second act until we get slightly.
Thank you for saying that. Yes, we're going to hold off talking about anything that happens in Act 2. And everything in Act 1, we think is fair game in terms of spoilers. So we'll let you know when we're moving into Act 2 or spoiler territory.
Mm-hmm. I did find it quite challenging in some ways, which we'll discuss a bit more later on. But what often strikes me at first when reading a play is like how the text is written and how many stage directions and things there were. And I had the real feeling that Tomson Highway was trying to capture a very precise vision with his stage directions. There's some very specific descriptions of exactly how a wailing noise sounds, or exactly where the light goes and things. So I think he's got a very controlled idea in his mind of this play. It interested me that this was supposed to be a set of 7 plays, but after writing this play, he moved on to write a novel instead. So maybe having a bit more control over what is said and what happens. I don't know.
Although, having said that, I heard him say that he particularly enjoyed a production of the play that happened in Japan with Japanese actors. And
I didn't know about that.
There you go. So he's willing to forego some control when it happens, when it's produced elsewhere in the world.
I'm quite interested in how that would work, because there's sections of the play that are in the Cree language as well. So I'm interested, if you stage this outside of Canada or outside of areas where people have understanding of the Cree language, how you would do that in terms of, because in the script there's translations side by side to the text, but how would you do that to make sure that people could understand things?
And two things about that. One, I'm curious as to how it would be performed in Canada, because most theater goers wouldn't have a clue. White people don't understand Cree. So how did they do that? And in Japan, I wonder if they rendered the Cree parts of the dialogue in the indigenous language Ainu. That would be interesting.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Yeah. This play is set on a fictional reservation, And it's about a group of men that are either middle-aged and a couple of the next generation, a couple of younger ones. There's a number of female characters, but they're all potentially played by one actress, and they have a different role in the play, so that the active protagonists in the plot and the spoken part of the play are a group of men. And it's a play that gives the reader or the viewer extremes of humor and tragedy. I think is how I would
tragic
summarize
comedy, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think he's spoken in interviews about really trying to achieve like the pinnacle of both, and have people like crying from sorrow and crying from laughter at the same time, even, and trying to bring those tragedy and comedy like right together into the moment on stage.
As a literary text, did that work for you?
I was amused and saddened, but I didn't actually laugh or cry.
I found that the bits that were supposed to be comical in the wake of some of the most tragic moments felt very hollow to me, and I didn't really feel receptive to those comedy aspects at the time when I was feeling more upset and disturbed by other aspects of the play.
So this is very much a play about men, and in particular indigenous men, but yet the deepest part of the story, or I think that the part that I placed the most value on, was the story that was kind of in the backdrop of the women. And I almost wish that we'd started with the first play in this series, which is the Rez Sisters. I didn't know about that. I didn't know the connection chronologically or whatever. So maybe we'll do that for indigathon next year.
Yes.
Because that one is very much centered on the women characters, many of whom are in this play. But this is very much a play, I think, about indigenous life, but it's also about misogyny and emasculation and sexuality and a whole bunch of things, gender type issues. I don't think it would fly if it was written today. I don't know.
I mean, some challenges there.
Yes. I mean, I feel like I really respected what Tomson Highway was trying to do in very honestly depicting misogyny, abuse, difficult relationships between the sexes, things like alcoholism, all those, the issues that he brought to the play, I respected. But I think, I'm not sure you could write it in this form today. And I think my feeling about the play, actually, if I hadn't known that he'd chosen to write a play with the women as the main characters and the men, the male spirit of Nana Bush, which we should talk about, I would have felt, whereas in this one, it's about the male characters and and Nana Bush, the spirit's female side. Yes. If I didn't know that there was a pair of plays like that, I would have had more problems with the depiction of women in this play.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, I definitely found that, because I was reading the play without knowing. I didn't do like more background reading until after I'd finished reading the play, so I had no idea that there was this other play, and at times I was very uncomfortable. Although that said, even in the very first scenes, there's a part where the men are kind of competing with each other for things that they think are going to benefit the reserve. So one of them wants to set up a bakery and one of them wants to set up a radio channel, and they're kind of saying like, oh, which of us should go first, and both think that their idea is the most important. And while they're competing and getting nowhere on that, then they find out that the women have gone out and set up a hockey team and are playing in this important competition, and it kind of shows that the women in this play at least are kind of getting things done while they're kind of just
absolutely
competing a little bit.
So we probably should have mentioned that earlier, that's kind of another one of the key premises of that is that their wives, their girlfriends, their sisters, they have banded together and formed a female hockey team, and most of the men are quite put out and threatened by this. Mm-hmm. And that all happens kind of off screen, and it's their reaction to that is.
Yeah, I think when you say it happens off screen, I think although Tilly said you felt like the stage directions for this play are very prescriptive, I really this is a play I would love to see staged, and I felt that sometimes you read a play and it's just words, whereas reading this play, I was seeing how it would be staged. I was picturing it in my mind. He sets it up that you've got the spirit realm, in effect, at the top of the stage. So we're on 2 levels. And that's where Nana Bush, the embodiment of Nana Bush that takes various female characters through the play, is based, as it were. And then you've got the men's zone, that's the main stage, and then an implied zone that's sort of beyond the stage, where I suppose where the audience is, which is acts as the ice rink during the hockey games and so on. And that use of space I admired. I think I could really see that would absolutely work, and with the sound and the lighting you could achieve a really interesting, I suppose, dramatic spectacle.
Yes, I would love to see it staged as well. One of the things that really struck me as I was reading it, because I had never read it, I'd never seen it performed. I've been very familiar with Tomson Highway, but never seen any of his plays, is that it was not for several years after this play was produced that the whole issue of, in the Canadian context, of murdered and missing Indigenous women came to the fore. And this is a play that we're not going to say anything quite yet in specifically, but is very much about violence against women. And that reading it in the context of what has now emerged about that, I mean, it was just such an epidemic issue in Canada. I can't remember the stats. Nobody cared. The police didn't care. Investigations didn't happen. And it's just one of many blights on Canada that this has happened. And so reading this play was like, oh my God. Yeah. So
it kind of sits in maybe a darker context now, knowing that kind of background.
That's right. And as a Canadian, I am remedially educating myself on all the issues, on as many of the issues about Indigenous life in a Canadian context, and just realizing what an evil country my country is. And I can say that. You guys maybe couldn't say that about Canada, but I just did, and it's true. And so reading about the life on the reservation, and then with my inchoate understanding of the history of what Canada did in sequestering Indigenous people on reservations and not allow and curtailing their freedoms and all the colonial bullshit, that added a layer of nuance to what assholes so many of the men were. Not that it justified, not that it explained or justified, but putting that context alongside it from the nonfiction and historical reading I've been doing, it was a really rich experience to read the play. Yeah.
And I think Tomson Highway was born on a reservation but didn't grow up on one, but then later went back and worked as a social worker in reservations, if I'm right in thinking that. So he's really building on the experience that he's had working in communities with a lot of difficulties and challenges because of that history that you've been talking about when he's writing these plays set on this fictional reservation, which it was originally going to be a series of 7, and I think only 3 are written so far.
Interestingly, in fact, he wasn't born on the reservation. He was born in a tent in a snowbank during like one of his father's or his parents' caribou hunting trips in the north of, so their home reservation is what is given as his place of birth, but he wasn't actually born there. He was born about 200 kilometers further north.
Wow.
Oh, fascinating. So certainly his life began reservation life, family on the reservation.
Yeah. And you were saying about the sort of the layers. I think it's a very many layered play. We talked about the literal layers on the stage, but it emotionally and in terms of ideas, it's many layered. He said he tries to bring divinity, humanity, and nature into all his work. He feels we're out of touch with nature, which we know, but also something about that losing mythology in our lives has taken something away from us as human beings. And I suppose because he uses both mythology and Catholic mythology, in effect, in the play, I really latched onto that, I suppose, to understand his intentions.
I suppose he's taken quite a modern interpretation of mythologies, as in the way that Nanabush is presented is as modern female characters in this play, and presumably as modern male characters in the previous one. So he's kind of bringing some of those legends into a modern context.
Yeah, and we should say that Nanabush is like a kind of a trickster figure that is really important in Cree. Well, and in fact, generally, I think
in several versions of that trickster character, I think.
Yeah,
and I don't pretend to know any more than that about her. And in fact, it's usually a man.
Yeah, either.
I think, and it's a gender neutral language in Cree, if I'm right, and so Nanabush is neither him nor her.
In fact, there's a moment, isn't there, in the play about one of the characters expressing quite a post-colonial frustration with English for always having to gender everybody.
Yeah. Oh, so can we come back to the fact that he uses a certain amount of Cree in the play?
Yes.
And in reading things around the world, as I do, I've read poetry and various things where people use sort of other language in. And actually, this was one of the occasions where I felt, as a non-Cree speaking audience member, if I were watching the play, I felt actually it would have worked fine for me, because sometimes it's short interjections like "nee," and now I feel like I know what "nee" means, But also, it often occurs in the commentary on the hockey game, and if you don't know how to play ice hockey, an ice hockey game commentary is going to mean very little to you anyway, but it's about the atmosphere and the pace and so on. So in fact, I thought, no, I would have had no problem with watching that. I didn't feel it was exclusive to non-Cree speaking.
Well, thank you, people, for not asking me to explain the hockey stuff, because I'm one of those very, very gay, the gayest of gay Canadians that I don't know anything about hockey. I played hockey as a kid for about, 4 or 5 years, and my total scoring record was one assist. But that's not counting all the goals that I accidentally scored on my own team.
Yeah, I don't really know that much about ice hockey, but I found it entertaining that obviously the women are starting this ice hockey team, and there is one man that is their referee, and that's Pierre St-Pierre, and he can't actually really skate, and he lost his skates many years ago after somebody threw one of them at somebody else, and then he's going around trying to find his skates, and that's one of the kind of comedy aspects of the play, I suppose. And then in the commentary, he's like wobbling around on his skates, and the ice hockey
wobbling around for a couple different reasons, I think.
Yes.
Maybe now we should start to talk about the spoilers in the second act. So if you don't want spoilers, I mean, this is a very old play, but if you don't want to hear how it turned out or whatever, we're going to move into kind of the end of the play, and you can come back after you've read it later. So Tilly, why don't you start? What did you think of the second act?
I found it quite unexpected, actually. I knew it was going to be I suppose a dramatic and tense play, but I didn't expect it to escalate so quickly into violence that was fairly extreme. I think this, in the modern parlance, we'd say trigger warnings, I suppose, for significant violence against women, quite a graphic and unpleasant rape scene, which I wasn't entirely sure was fully justified, if I'm honest, in the context of the play. I didn't feel like there was enough exploration of it, potentially, and you two might kind of argue back on that, and also some ableism, which I think we could maybe explain a little bit.
I thought it was one of the weaknesses of the play myself. It didn't really need what was the, I mean, it was overly symbolic.
We
haven't quite identified the whole thing between indigenous spirituality and Christianity, which is a big thing in the play, especially between a couple of the characters. The fact that the woman was raped with a crucifix, I just think that's really...
Think about the Catholic Church's role around residential schools and so on. You can see why you might want to do that, but I'd still have reservations
it
about
was
it's appropriate.
just
Not from don't let's offend the Catholic Church, but more the.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not talking about anything about blasphemy or anything like that. No.
Yeah.
But just really that it didn't. I don't think it plays well now.
And the way it was shown, and like I'm talking about the stage directions again, and the very precise stage directions, and the kind of positioning of her, and the descriptions of her showing where she's bleeding and things. It wasn't in any way shielded, or it was very voyeuristic.
And almost to the point of being gratuitous.
Yes, exactly that.
I mean, I think one of my issues with the play, and how I think you'd stage it differently now, is also a lot of use of just like nudity, particularly of for women, and exaggerated sexual characteristics, prosthetic breasts and prosthetic.
That's exactly one of the things I was going to go on to.
Big bum. Yeah, one of the characters was nicknamed Big Bum.
Yeah.
I was all in favor of the male nudity, but
well, and that had a specific dramatic purpose.
Yes.
You could. It was funny, embarrassing, but also, was all about the power between the men and the women. Whereas some of the exaggerated sort of use of the female body felt a bit gratuitous.
Probably wouldn't have in 1989.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. It's of its time in that sense.
Doesn't age well. We haven't talked about, but I think there's a lot of stuff. I've found some academic, and I don't want to really go too far down the academic rabbit hole, but that talked about the hybridity of like indigenous culture and popular culture, Western culture. So we got the hockey, and we got the indigenous spirituality and so on. But two things in popular culture that I thought, okay, really? So The Exorcist and the crucifix, right?
Yeah, I can see that. I've not seen The Exorcist, but I can see the kind of religious.
Young girl who's possessed, she sticks the crucifix up her vagina.
Yeah,
and that was 1973.
Yes.
And the fact that this is a dream sequence, that it's all a dream, and like when was the Dallas and JR and it was all a dream? When was that?
Yeah, I found that quite weak as an ending.
So that's the other spoiler, is that at the end of the play, it's all this one character's dream.
Yeah. And I think part of that is supposed to be about the kind of notions of cyclical time that I mean, I've not read much indigenous Canadian work, but apparently that's a really common feature, or a common way of time being perceived as it's being cyclical in nature, and it happens in the Red Sisters as well. But saying that it was all, or suggesting that it was all a dream, just was a bit underwhelming for me personally.
So I have to find out if the Dallas episode where the dream thing,
but it's been used in a million children writing, creative writing exercises. It's like the classic thing, isn't it? That, how do I end this? I'll say it was all a dream. It's a
get out clause.
Cheap ending.
Season 9 of Dallas.
Yes,
with where the whole season was a dream.
All a dream.
1985-86.
Right, so it was recent.
Reflecting on that,
I think that he should have chosen some other things from Western culture.
To me, at that point, saying that or suggesting that it was all a dream was a way of getting out of what I said, actually discussing that rape and making that rape like serve more of a purpose. It was like, it doesn't matter because it was just a dream, so we don't need to worry about going into that in any more.
From what little I know about Tomson Highway, he is a bit of an idealist, and he very much prioritizes thinking positively, if I can put it in those very simplistic terms.
Yes.
He has written the novel that he went on to write. What was it called? Kiss of the Fur Queen.
Oh, yeah.
Kiss of the Fur Queen, 1998. So it's quite a bit later.
Yeah.
That is about the experience of kids in residential school. And it's apparently quite horrific. I haven't read it. But he says that his own experience in residential school was largely positive. He's one of the few Indigenous people that I know of that says, it wasn't that bad for me. I'm really glad that he at least wrote the novel, because I think that other members of his family had horrific experiences.
Yeah, and he may well have just been lucky and got a lucky school. But yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, obviously he then went into higher education and so on. And, you know, I can understand him thinking like, well, that school did give him that opportunity,
right,
which he's valued, whilst, you know.
There's still a hopefulness about this work that I still place some value. I place a lot of value on. Yeah.
Well, you know, it's really interesting you saying that, because various characters have dreams that they're trying to achieve. So Zachary's trying to get his bakery, and Big Joey's trying to get his radio show. But then you've got the younger generation, Simon and Patsy, who they're the ones that are trying to bring together their sort of traditional beliefs and so on, with an aim to create change and to take things forward. So they are the two optimistic characters, and they're the two characters that die in the course of the action. So I found that quite the opposite of optimistic. Then I wondered whether he needed to make it all a dream to sort of almost undo his own negativity.
Yeah. Correction, I don't think Patsy dies, because it mentions her recovering in the hospital, but because she's recovering in the hospital.
I lost that thread too. So
well, that's really interesting, because I thought she went to the hospital but she died. But maybe
it was the baby died.
The baby died. It was a miscarriage. Yeah, as a result, that would make sense,
because the baby definitely didn't live. Yeah. But that we end with this, with we don't need to name him, the one character who's it's all been a dream, but he does have somebody's lipstick kiss on his butt. But it wasn't the town, it wasn't the other woman, it was his wife's kiss and a new baby. And even reading the description of the baby's laughing was quite powerful for me to read. So that was the positive note. So that I kind of hung my hat on that was something. But
and maybe we could have got to that without the dream bit. Did you notice that his wife is called Hera?
Yes.
And you know, we all know that Hera is like earth goddess, you know, very powerful Greek earth goddess of fertility. And I did think, did he have that in mind? And actually reading what he says, that was a deliberate choice. So he does draw things in from other cultures.
That goes back to this idea, this very academic word, hybridization, the hybridity of the play, pulling in things from various places.
He also said about Hera that sometimes there's a kind of a questioning when the Christian God came across into indigenous cultures. It's like, well, where did you leave your wife? Like, why is there only one of you? Why don't you have another half? And obviously Hera is the other half to the Greek mythology. She's Zeus's wife, isn't she? She's Zeus's wife. So it's kind of like filling that gap almost by bringing this hybridization into it.
Another thing that I heard him say, which kind of helped me, I suppose, in understanding the play, was he said that it was deliberately cartoon-like. So it's deliberately extreme. So not just deliberately funny and tragic, but it, you know, and what he said, and it's something that you know, the three of us could never say, but he said that reservation life is almost cartoon-like in its extremes. You know, that's how he experiences when he goes back, you know, and he's on a reservation and with people. You know, it's like Wile E. Coyote, you know, constantly being killed but popping back up again. That was a deliberate artistic choice. Which I found interesting.
Well, I'm really glad I finally read this play, because I feel like I don't have to give my Canadian passport back. I finally read the Tomson Highway play. And so I think we should think about, I'm not going to extract any commitments from you people tonight, but that we might read the first one for next year's IndigAthon.
Yes.
I'm more than happy to do that.
Sounds like it might be even more up our alley.
It's a date.
Well, this has been an absolute delight. So Tilly of Tilly's Shelf and Roz of Scallydowning About the Books, thank you so much.
And thank you
so much
Shawn,
for having us.
the Book Maniac, and we look forward to sharing the video.